lost his life. But again, as leaders, we must know and understand that who is our enemy. I think inviting the culture of inviting international countries like Russia and France or United States of America to train our security men and women who are supposed to protect us. I think that is a security threat immediately, because in terms of security, we're supposed to keep a secret of ourselves, but if a presidential residence can be raided and our president can be killed, that begs the question of how porous our security is in the world. Not only that, but again, we have seen the emergence of the insurgencies around, especially the African continent. Our security is at threat, and these security threats are exacerbated by those who are coming from outside. So we really need to look at how these things are happening, and of course, what is the agenda that we must lose our own leadership. Again, we also, as leaders, we dig our own graves. We must remember President Morsi was actually had in his whole four-year term, he actually changed 7 prime ministers. It was a reason and sign that he's failing to administer or to manage his country. The current prime minister now, who is declared himself as president of Haiti, was supposed to be dethroned this weekend, and it's such a coincidence that the president died and he has taken over the power. So which side is he? Which side is he supporting, and who is he making sure that there's divisions? And I think citizens, they owe allegiance to the leadership, that they work together, irregardless of political or ethnicity or racial differences.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charles Sinkala. Now, let's get into today's topic, which is a quest towards unifying Africa. How feasible, how possible is this? Dr. Nick Wanyam, let me begin with you. Now, unifying Africa, the president of Uganda, during his inaugural speech, said we can unite under one language, the Swahili. Now, talking about unifying Africa under language, we know there are several other ways. Now, let's begin with the possibility.
Uniting Africa is a great idea, it's a great thing, and if it were to happen, we will all be very happy. Except the Ugandan president had some other elements to give us, but what is stopping Africa from uniting is not language. And yes, if we were to unite and use the Swahili, it would be great, and you could top it up with Lingala, it would be great. But just uniting and using the language is not the problem. That's not what's going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
First and foremost, we should find out, what we first have to clearly define what are the problems of Africa.
Okay.
Why are the problems there? And why do we have problems? Why do we have difficulties solving those problems? We have to state the problems, so that when we unite, we would know that we are uniting to do this, and that. Otherwise, we'll unite and continue to drink and dance and run after women and drink and so on, as we've been doing, and it's not going to help. We should state our problems very clearly and say that we are uniting so that we can be able to tackle this, and that, and to clearly state that we are unable to solve this problem A because we are divided. Now, if we can come to that point where we name the problems of Africa on our fingertips, and then we choose to unite because we want to face those problems, then it will be great. And of course, then we can now say, let us learn to communicate in one language, so that the French don't come and divide us with their language, the English don't divide us, and so on. So that is the only time when we say, let us use one language, so that we begin to build these bonds of unity amongst us, instead of using a stranger's language. But it's very important that we understand one thing. If we want Africa to unite, we've got to do what we must do to keep a city like Douala clean. What do I mean? If you and I realize that the city of Douala is not clean, then every home state has got to clean its own compound.
Yeah.
Now, when every home state cleans its own compound, at the end of the day, all of Douala will be clean. If you say you have to unite all of the home states in Douala for Douala to be clean, then there's a problem. You have to first have the goodwill of doing the little things, so that when you unite, we'll be able to do the big things.
So now what you mean in context is that we should begin with regional integration?
Not even regional integration. What is it that is making our countries fail? Because our countries in Africa are not doing well.
Okay.
So our home states refer to our countries. You know, the compound is dirty and so on. My compound is dirty, yours is dirty, Bako's own is dirty, Dr. Sinkada's own, his own compound is dirty. What is it that is keeping our compounds dirty? If we can already agree on that and solve the problems of keeping our compounds clean, I'm using it as figurative language here for, and if I can keep my compound clean, you keep your compound clean, and he keeps his compound clean. At the end of the day, all of Africa will be clean. Then we say, there's a problem that, you know, there's this other major problem that we have to put our hands together so that we can collectively do it. If we don't identify that and then just begin to make some mega structures, they will not work, because after all, we have the African unity, which is not working. It has achieved nothing, and it's not working, and it's not delivering. Why is it not delivering? I mean, I hear that the building that they sit on, they didn't even build it themselves to run it. They need money from someone else. So the problems, again, we have to understand how a country functions. And even if Africa were going to be that giant country, we have to understand how things work. What are the 3 or 4 forces that drive a system, be it a country or whatever, be it a small country or a big country, it doesn't matter. It's about principles. The politics has got to be right. And when we come to politics, we are saying that when we are talking about independence in Africa, it is not independent. We are not independent at all. We have a birth certificate that we were given at independence, but we are not independent. We don't have the political independence, for starters. Okay. Then the second kind of independence, which is even more important than the political independence, is called economics, the economic independence. We don't have economic independence for several reasons that I'm going to outline here when the microphone comes back. And then when the politics and the economics are good, that drives the development, which we don't have. And again, like we have said before, these 3 elements, sound politics, sound economics, and sound development, these things are driven around by a sound education. Okay. But up until now, the education in Africa has been very poor, and that is the background to most of the things. And if we are going to name the problems of Africa, there's bad governance, there's poverty, poor education, no industrialization, failed communication systems. You know, everything is kind of like just failed, and we need to be able to look at these things and then have a strategy. What we lack is real strategy. We need strategy. It's not just about coming together in one big box and speaking Swahili. That's not the problem.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Digmoyam. Now, Mr. Artemi Bako, according to Yoweri Museveni, Uganda's president, during his inaugural speech, he says Africans use Swahili, considering it a neutral language and non-ethnic language. This in a bid to unite in Africa. What do you think? How possible should we start with? How possible is uniting Africa under one language?
I think that it's a very excellent initiative, but at the wrong time. The time for that has not yet come, because Africa has a very long way in achieving its unity, judging at the facts and the structures which are in place. And Africans must understand where the root of their problem is coming from and why Africa the way it is today. We must be able to diagnose the reason why Africa is the way it is, and the reason why the leadership of Africa is the way it is, and the reason why our administration, right down to our population and our economy, our politics, our religion, our education, why it is that way. We need to be able to understand all of these things in order for us to start making the right changes. Now, if you look carefully, in the 60s, when the African countries gained their independence, I call it the reborn or a born again of the West in Africa. That is, the West gave a rebirth. That was a born again of the African nations by the West. So the Africans did not gain an independence which they fought for. The independence were ones which were being negotiated. And this is the structures which were placed down way back in the 60s, specifically in the continent of Africa. And this goes way back when we talk about the 1884 to 1885, to 1923, to 1929, 1944, and 1945. All those structures had been placed by the United Nations in building a united bloc to overthrow Africa. And that is why if Africa is going to take a step forward, Africa needs to know where it has been held captive. It's at the level of the United Nations. You cannot expect the African member state to be sovereign when at the level of the United Nations they do not have veto power, when all other counterparts or Caucasian brothers and sisters have their veto power. So at that level you come to realize that we have been marginalized and we have been abused as far as democracy is concerned. And now you also realize that, like a doctor was trying to cite down certain things which are the cause of our problems in Africa. You have education, you have politics, you have economics, and then you have economy, and then you have religion. So these four structures were what have been instituted in Africa that Africans need to redefine if they are going to move forward. That simply means that we need Africans who have profound knowledge to teach the African children, to build a sense of awareness in Africa which is able to unite Africa. And then there's this other aspect of unity which I don't think that the president of Uganda is putting into consideration. Africa here, we are not only talking about Africa, because if you look at the way they divided Africa, they didn't divide Africa only as in member states. They divided Africans by Africans, Americans, Africans in the Caribbean. So we are talking of a huge chunk of Africans that are out of Africa. So we cannot be talking of Africa and the unity of Africa when these Africans are kept away with. So we need to build in policy structures, because the system which they are overthrowing us and they are what is killing us today in Africa is that the African head of states and the African member states have not learned to come together. They are not functioning as one unit. Why, if you notice with the West, they function as one unit, whereby France, for example, is like the EU, and the same France is like the United Nations, and the same France is like AU, and the same France is almost possessing the ECOWAS. That is the way they work. They work like hyenas. So they are together. And this, they understood that if they were ever going to overcome Africa and subject Africa to where it is as it is today, they will need to speak with one voice. They will need to act as one people. What explains the fact, for example, in a country of South Africa where you have 7.1% white minorities controlling almost 35 million Africans, which makes about 75% of that country's population. You don't see their presence, but you feel their structures. Their structures is heavily felt than their presence. So you come to realize that the white minorities are not the minorities we are seeing. It is the united front which stands behind that minority. What explains the fact that we are talking of Africa, and yet the future and the destiny of Africa is decided at the level of the EU, at the level of the United Nations, where Africa has no power at that level. That is Libya today, is being reborn at the level of Berlin Conference 2. That is Ethiopia, is being reborn by 3 other Western nations. So this is the way they have partitioned Africa separately, and they are dealing with each member state individually. And that's why you realize that sometimes a head of state or a leader may want to do something which is right for his people, but because he's standing as one man, dealing with a united bloc, dealing with a united people, it becomes the ratio does not balance. So we need African leaders in order to maintain respect, dignity, mutuality amongst us. We need to create that balance. And then there's another thing which Africans need to understand. One of the things that Africans have not discovered about themselves is that the value and the potential of Africa and who they are, their identity, is a major area of education, which if we are ever going to emphasize on the African people, whether home and abroad, we need to emphasize the aspect of identity. Because when we begin to look at the aspect of racism, white supremacy. We need to understand the best of all of these things. Racism is not because the white man is superior to the black man. It's because the white man understands the superiority of a black man and understands the position that the black man has as a melanated individual which is superior by intelligence. Name them. So they understood these principles, and that is what is changing. That Africans, do you know, to be, as a matter of fact, that we are talking of Africa as considered to be a third world continent, where you find one of the most poorest countries in the world. Yet, in terms of resources, like I gave the analysis, Congo alone, put America, China, Europe, Russia, put them all together, Congo alone is richer than all of them. But that is a country that has suffered civil conflict up till now as we are speaking. So we cannot talk here on uniting Africa when we are missing the core of why Africa is the way it is. What explains the aspect of Ben Lewis that Africans today are running out of Africans. Where are they running to? When yet we find the Western governments and structures feeling very comfortable, well established in Africa. All these conflicts we are talking of Africa here does not affect them. They are well settled. They don't travel with their individuals. They travel by government, while Africans travel as individuals. So you come to realize here that technically and obviously clear that Africa is the one helping the West. The West is actually seeking refuge and as a refugee in Africa to build their economy. So African leaders need to come together to understand that if they are going to take their place, the aspect here is not entering into an area of how will I put it, equality. One here is bigger than the other, and our position must be respected. We must learn to live together by living apart. So the kind of education we need to give to the African people is a kind of education where it shows them who they are. It makes them to understand what Africa truly is. The Africa which was before the colonialists enter here, and their values. What we have today now in Africa is purely the Western culture, Western civilization, suggestions all coming from the West. So Africa cannot grow with this kind of system. So language is a beauty. But language as of now is not what is going to unite Africa, because we need to build a serene atmosphere, an Africa which is aware that there are another group of Africans abroad who needs to reconcile back to Africans. The day Africa will seek solidarity with the Africans in the Caribbean, Africans in the Asian, Africans in Europe, African America, that will be the end of Europe and America, because that will take Africa to where it is. And the building of Africa and the restoration of Africa cannot be done by the current status quo of the administrations that we have today. It will take the young generation, which makes the majority of the African people, whether both home and abroad. These people we are talking of, our administration that we are complaining that are creating all the safe passage for neo-colonialism and exploitation of the Western corporations in Africa. We need to grow past the point of not only looking at what the West is doing to Africa, but let us fight to unite ourselves, which is very important.
All right. Uniting ourselves is actually the problem here, and how is that achievable? Now, Dr. Charles Sinkala, the Organization of African Unity was created to resolve this problem, to unite Africa. We saw it failing, and changing its name to the African Union. Until now, there are several attempts to unite Africa. Now, at this point in time, the president of Uganda is proposing that we should use a single language, Swahili. To him, he thinks that the language is non-ethnic, it's not non-ethnic, and equally, this to him, he thinks can unite Africa. Now, what's your opinion on that? How possible is uniting Africa under a single language? Dr. Charles Sinkala, you might want to put your mic on. We can get the feedback from you, please. Switch on your mic, Dr.
Certainly. Thank you very much. That is a very important question that you have posed. I'd like to begin by saying, in relation to what my fellow panelists have indicated of what is a problem at this stage, and I think I would like to extend that we definitely know what is a problem of Africa, and we know what Africa should be. The question is, how do we achieve Africa, a continent, and the people of Africa the way we want them to be? Many of the people have indicated on how to do it. But again, having an idea of having one language that it will unite Africa, it's something very laughable, especially from the highest leader, Yoweri Museveni, Kaguta Museveni, whom we respected so much on the continent. And him having done his part, I think is running out of ideas that we can now implement. I will tell you very quickly that the formation, or rather the conceiving of Organization of African Unity in Accra, Ghana in 1942, that bred to the people of working the culture when the agitators of Africa, the leaders like the last man who was standing, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, whom we just buried this week, those are the leaders who had mapped up on how Africa should be and what Africa should be in the next 100 years from that time of the first African country to recognize the regaining of their independence in Accra, Ghana in 1957. And as well, the born of the OAU in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where they mapped up the strategy and they mapped up the plan, they mapped up who's supposed to be involved. They mapped up all the corners. If you check that document, which was signed by 32 heads of state, we shouldn't be talking about finding out what is wrong with Africa and how Africa should be. It is quite unfortunate that we are going round and round instead of us going together. Uniting Africa by one single language, that is in the document published many years ago, the language that we thought that we can speak. But again, that has been faced with so many obstacles in the way that Africa, including the world, there's more than 2,500 languages, and the language system itself, the linguists have indicated that they haven't done much, to educate the people, in terms of the promotion of the language, which is a universal community for all the people of Africa. But if you look at the Organization of African Unity, which it was formed that when we regain our power from the colonizers, the Germany, the Belgium, the British, France, and many other people who never invited, but it was divided by those people who went there, by those also the explorers who came to Africa. And I'm telling you now for free that I remember very well that Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, may he so rest in peace, he told me strictly this, what happened, that that Berlin conference was an auction where Africa was auctioned. And Nigeria, being at that time without discovering the oil, it was auctioned for 780,000 pounds. South Africa, because they managed to find out about the diamonds and the gold, it was sold to a little bit more of about 2.3 million pounds. And these people, they took ownership to protect their interest of that investment because they bought these countries. If you remember very well in that region where you are there in the West region and the Central region of Africa, there was Niger Delta Company. That company still exists now. That company is the one which bought most of the African countries that you are talking about, including the Francophone countries, which were ceremoniously given to France. And France has got control. And we're not talking about cutting our umbilical cord from France. We keep on crying, we keep on dying, and France and all the other people whom they sleep in bed with, whether it's the CIA, the United States of America, whether the British or the French themselves or the Belgium, they hire mercenaries, including from here, South Africa, to go and dispose of, or even now they are killing the presidents that they do not form part of or they do not protect the investment of these entities which was bought. And if you look in the books of the United States of America, for most of us who studied law, you understand that these nations has been registered as entities and they've been patented already. So that's a bigger picture that we do not talk about. We're talking about the mere small things, pocket change of a language and Swahili or whatever. We will never going to speak the same languages in Africa. And I think that is misguided if we have to work towards that. In fact, if you look at the way African Union has been diluted of the basics of the values that we had, you know, the idea of Julius Kambarage Nyerere from the other part of Africa to Toko Sekwale and all these other world leaders, Samora Machel, Nelson Mandela, all these we have buried now. We haven't even taken things. You hear that it was the same language. But the funding model has been a problem. That's why we find that the funding model of AU is 80% coming from those people we are fighting against. You know, so there's no way we're going to implement our policies and that agenda of 1963 in Addis Ababa, that white document. You know, we hear again former president of Zimbabwe, he mentioned the Agenda 2063. We are not anywhere closer working towards that document. The implementation has been a problem. So hence, you know, Africa 55 states, you know, where we considered 54 recognized sovereign states of Africa, and we considered the fifth state, which is those who are in diaspora. That's why we call ourselves Africa 55 states, is an alternative to Organization of African Union, which our organization is not a state enterprise, or it's not a state linked organization like the OAU, who have to go through the processes of bilateral and multilateral relationships with countries, and where they cannot speak against the United States of America. They cannot speak against France when they kill President Patrice Emery Lumumba. They can't speak against the United States of going to kill Colonel Gaddafi. They can't speak against killing Iraqi President, you know, all those type of things, because they have been made to conform to the system. But our organization as Africa 55 states, our mandate is directly from the people. We engage in with the people, and the organization is supported by the people, and we refuse the support that comes from outside. You must remember very well, whoever calls you for food and buys you food will call the tune and the dance that you shall dance. You're never going to dance your tune, but you will dance the tune of somebody who is feeding you. So the moment Africa and Africans ourselves, we stop looking in the morning on where we have to see before we eat, that will be the beginning of change. But we are not in any way in competition of Organization of African Unity, now AU. You know, we are working together with them, and they've given us a mandate. They've recognized us, you know, that we are a non-state actors organization that is helping to implement the policies that they cannot do. And you can see now, if you talk about African unity does not lie in one currency. African unity does not lie in one passport or regional integration or all those nonsense of people they are talking about. African unity is having the power to control ourselves. This was an agenda in 1963. Dr. Kenneth Kaunda just died recently, less than a month ago. He's still awake, he can see and he can hear what I'm saying. What we mentioned, that Africa must educate themselves. That was a big point. Then second point was Africa, we must treat ourselves when we are sick. That was a very good point. Africa must feed herself. You know, all these values of the dynamics of society were tabled there, that Africa will have a garden that will feed herself, you know, not being fed from somewhere else. You can relate to what I'm trying to explain to you now on the point of the basis of this pandemic. Africa does not have an IP, intellectual property right, to manufacture the vaccines of the pandemic of the coronavirus until Johnson & Johnson comes from the United States of America, or AstraZeneca comes from India, or whatever comes from Russia and all these type of things to force us to vaccinate ourselves. We cannot do it, but we've got the capacity of doing it because the franchise has been given away and those people are fighting it, they are killed. And the problem is we fight alone. I've been telling many people that we should not fight alone. In fact, if you fight alone, you're useless. Look at the bees. I hear on the panel there, one related to a hyena. Hyenas, they are useless when they are one. You can even kill them. But hyenas, when they are more than one, they are 5, they are 6. They can even kill a lion or an elephant. Look at Colonel Gaddafi. Colonel Gaddafi spent most of his last years, in fact, 12, 13 years before he was killed, traveling from one African country to another African country, Nigeria. He came to South Africa. He went to my country, Zambia. He went to Nigeria. He went to many other places to inform the Africans that why do we go to Europe? What are we looking for in Europe? Let us strategize ourselves, irregardless of the language we are speaking, so that we protect what we are importing in Africa. We protect what we are exporting from Africa. In that way, we shall control and tell the people that United States dollar should be equivalent to the naira there in Nigeria. I was so surprised to see that one United States dollar is equivalent to a lot of nairas. Why should we Africans give so much of our currency just to receive $1? It doesn't make sense. But to tell you on my point where I'm about to conclude, the reason and the purpose of Africa to unite, and I'll give an example to a country that I've watched coming from nothing, and now it is one of the superpowers in the world. Africa, we've got more than 3.2 million organizations, especially now Pan-African organization, they are coming. It's a lot of them. Already we are in partnership with a few of them. The idea for Africa 55 states is to create a web, to create organization, these NGOs, non-government organizations, including governments, advocates for new governance, politics. As I am also a president for Organization of African Political Parties, we want to bring up hygiene so that everybody will start working towards one goal. The same goal which was there in 1957, 1942, when the agitators of independence of Africa, they said, no, we cannot be fed by the British. Britain is the United Kingdom with a population of only about less than 40 million people. How can it control 1.2 billion now Africans? This is what they talked about. So what I'm saying and submitting to us and those who are listening is how do we integrate each other, regardless of what language we are speaking. Whether we speak in tongues, whether we speak in Swahili, whether we speak in Zulu, whether we speak in any other language, the main ingredient of us working together to attain that economical power, which we did not attain, is by working towards the same goal that we are achieving. We plan that this is what we achieve. We stop listening from the outside. We stop importing the toothpicks that we can manufacture within the African continent. We say this we can import, this we cannot. We would like to see President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni to come frequently in South Africa. I want to see him going to Nigeria. I want to see him going to Port Bia there in Cameroon. I want to see him to go to Eritrea. I want to see him going to Ethiopia, Egypt, Mauritania, and all the African countries. All the African leadership must be integrating themselves and mapping up what strategy on implementation of this vehicle which we had. That is the point that I have to submit to you, that talking about a language is a dividing of society, where now you hear people talking about women, talking about men's rights, talking about who is black, talking about who is rich, who is poor, talking about indigenization, talking about the land was stolen. The land was never stolen. Our kings and queens, they gave land to the white people because they came to us. In fact, if you talk about the history of Nigeria, as I conclude on this point, the kings and the queens there in Nigeria, they are the ones who are selling the slaves. They were selling fellow Africans by the port to the Europeans who couldn't travel inside Africa. The people, they were getting the black people within the African continent, The kings, that's why you see now, just next door here in Lesotho, Eswatini, you can hear what is happening now. They are tired of these kings who preside over slaves, and they drive nicely and they live luxury, while the poor people from Eswatini, they live without eating anything. In fact, even in the United Kingdom, there is a agitators of a system now where they say, if Queen Elizabeth dies, be God protect me for what I've said, I'm not wishing her to die. They say there won't be any king. Prince Charles will never going to be allowed to be a king, because Queen Elizabeth, she's the heads of state for 24 countries in the world. South Africa is one of the countries that she's still head of state. Nigeria, she's still head of state. Mauritius, Seychelles, Sweden, Canada, they are agitating these people that we want to run our own affairs. So the moment Africa detaches themselves from the neo-colonialism and control, the moment Africa, those 14 countries in West Africa and part of East Africa, of the Francophone countries, they detach themselves from 1952 convention, where there is, France said they've got the first line of refusal, that they must use the franc to trade, that their income of the GDP must be deposited by in French government Minister of Finance. The moment Addo Akufo, president of Ghana, teams up with all those the leaders from there and say bye-bye to France, that will be the beginning of us getting forward. Otherwise, merely talking about small tokenism of politics and this and that, we shall never gonna govern ourselves. You can see how arms are coming now in Africa. We do not need arms in Africa to protect us from what? Africans now, they're picking up arms, we are killing each other. It's not white people are coming. If white people comes, it's mercenaries, they're coming to kill the president.
Sinkala, thank you very much for that lengthy analysis. We do very much appreciate. Now, coming back to you, Dr. Nick Wanyam, he raised the issue of being able to have the power, that uniting means having the power to control ourselves. And how do we achieve this? At this point in time now, when we look at the Organization of African Unity created to achieve this goal, it fails. The African Union has come in place and it's failing now. We have the African Continental Free Trade Area, which went into operation earlier this year. We've had the issues of having a single currency, which of course is equally failing now. What other means can we take? Uganda's president is proposing, let's start with having a common language.
Thank you very much. I don't mean to be rude, but of course, if you listen to all of us, we've thrashed the issue of language. Uniting Africa is not language. It's not a language problem. It's something more important than language. Once you have understood that very important thing, it becomes a foundational matter. Once the foundation is right, then you can throw in language, throw in this, throw in that, and throw in a little bit of coffee and so on, and it will work. But if you start beginning, if you think, if you are going to lay that foundational framework and you think it's language, then you get it all wrong. You know, interestingly, I was smiling when you were framing the question for me, because when I listened to Dr. Sinkala, the whole time he talked, there was one key thing that he said, which you just, I put it on paper here and I circled it, you just mentioned it. He says, you know, uniting Africa means Africans having the power to control ourselves. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Having the power to control yourself.
Is there a possibility to have that power?
So the question is, when you are talking the power, what do you mean?
Exactly.
You understand? What do you mean? Before I delve into that, let me say this. Israel is not a very big country. In terms of land, it's a small country, and I think the population, are they up to 10 million even? I don't know. The Israelites, you know a lot of things that they might be there 8 million or something, I have no idea. But watch my lips. If Israel wants to bring down all of Africa, Israel can take down all of Africa. Just give it a couple of months and all of Africa is down. Israel can do it. So the question is, what is it that Israel has to allow how to do that a mighty Africa. Once we can understand that, then we will know what is lacking. And so there is something that is lacking from our cookery, that if we don't get it, we will never have that power. That's the bottom line. And it's about the capacity to understand problems and solve problems. If you don't have the capacity to understand problems, and if you don't have the capacity to solve problems, you're going nowhere. That's where the real power is. The power to be able to control yourself is not about political decisions. It's the power to be able to solve your own problems. If you don't have that power to solve your problems and you have to depend on other people, then you are finished. That is where the power lies. So the question is, why don't we have the power, and how do we get it? Can we really, enumerate the things that make up that power? That is the thing. Now, if we can get that done and we begin to do it for real, then we'll see the light of day. And to really begin to understand where we are going to, let me say it and very loud and clearly that democracy has failed in Africa. Africa is not yet ripe for democracy. And if you look at, there are some 3 presidents in Africa that have shown a good example, and we are going to go into their mindsets and find out what is it that they are doing, and we are going to encourage all the 55 African states to copy those nations and do what they are doing. And if we could, even without uniting, if we could just copy and do what these 3 heads of states are doing in their nations and what their nations are doing, then we will begin to get that power that is missing. The first is Kagame, President Kagame. The second is President Adu
of Ghana.
Of Ghana. And the third is, may his soul rest in perfect peace, President Magufuli. These 3 presidents are the best presidents that Africa has had. And they have something. They have something that we just need to copy. Just copy. You see, they have got the template. Copy that template. And by the time every country copies that template and begins to apply it, it would fit into that my analogy of everyone sweeping their compound and the whole place is clean. So something is missing. It is technology. It is leadership. It is. We have an abundance of poverty. We need to replace that poverty with something. And when I'm talking about poverty, it's poverty in many sectors. It's financial poverty, poor capacities to solve problems, poor capacities to turn water into wine. I'm talking about industrialization. Poor capacities to sell anything. Now, when Ebako was speaking, he said that the Democratic Republic of Congo is very, very rich, which is true, but she has something, and she lacks some other thing too. And to understand what she lacks, which is very important, let's go and study Singapore. Singapore has nothing. Malaysia has nothing. Japan has nothing. South Korea has nothing. But there is something that they have got that we have not got. The real riches is not it's not what you find underground. The real riches is grey matter. When you're talking about riches, it's about your grey matter. That is your brain. How have you trained your brain? What can your brain can your brain think? Can you think and come up with solutions? When the rest of the world is laughing at us, say the black man is like this, they are not laughing at you because you're black. They are laughing at your inability to think your way through problems and make yourself great, even with what God has given you. Which means that, go around the world. Take the few black people who have excelled in something. Everybody worships them, and when they are worshiping them, they don't look at the color. Okay. Take Michael Jackson. Take President Barack Obama. Name them. When they excel at something, people hail them. and they forget the color. So it's about your capacity. It's about what you can do. That is the thing that is lacking. And like I said, we have bad leadership. We don't know what we are up to. We lack industrial capacities, and the industrial capacities depend a lot on technology, which we don't have. And we don't have industrial capacity and technology because our school systems don't teach those things. And so we need to change our school systems in Africa. The school systems in Africa the curricula in Africa need to be changed and to include about 4 or 5 key areas. The core things that need to be taught. It's not history, French language, English language, and so on. No. We have to reorient it and bring something up. Something that can allow us, like Dr. Sinkala was saying, we should be able to feed ourselves. We should be able to treat ourselves and do all those things. And I think between him, one of them was saying that we in Africa were not given the patent to produce COVID. No. Nobody gives you a patent. You make your discovery, you come up with it, and then you make your thing work, and you get yourself a patent.
Now,
it's not people who give you a patent.
When this Madagascar was coming up with something to manage the coronavirus pandemic, we saw, the situation in Madagascar, it was not permitted by the World Organization. Now, meaning we are
no, it was not. Nobody. The president of Madagascar made he made his concoction and in his country, and he gave all the how many million people in his country to drink it, and nobody stops him from doing that as long as it doesn't kill them. Okay, but now when it comes to, because that was treatment of the COVID-19. We have to make a distinction between treatment and prevention. When we are talking about the COVID-19 vaccines, we are talking about, of course, you have the common preventive measures, but the real preventive measure would be vaccination. And now we have a lot of conspiracy theories around the vaccination and so on. That's what is hurting it. But the question is, if you ask the question, why did Africa not come up with her own vaccine? So it's not because somebody stopped Africans from doing it. Nobody,
just like from what Dr.
Nobody respected. Nobody restricted us. No. I don't buy that. Nobody restricted any African laboratory or any country from trying her hand at producing the COVID vaccine. If there was anything, what stopped us was lack of technology, lack of that capacity. That's what I'm driving at. And so it is that lack of capacity in many sectors. We have lack of capacity to grow rice, lack of capacity to make soap, lack of capacity to go into our homes and find out the number of items that we import. That is where the key is. So until we address ourselves to that, we are not going to solve the problems. When we are talking about if we had to produce the vaccines in Africa, what we will do, we'll go to the laboratories that have already, done it, and then they would give us the patent right to produce, with their supervision, using their technology and so on. But nobody stopped us during the search to look for a way and means of producing the vaccines, and we couldn't do it because we don't have that technological base. It was lacking, and therefore check that and then spread it over everything else. Call it rice, call it bread, call it everything. It is that lack of technology. Why is it that we feed ourselves with Chinese rice? Who stopped us from growing rice? Why is it that we when our presidents are sick, they must fly to other countries? Why? Who stopped us? Nobody stopped us. It's total lack of technology and capacity.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Lack of technology and capacity. Now, that's opinion. Now, Mr. Atemi Bakona, we look at the vulnerability of African heads of state who've managed to stand on their own. We saw the likes of Gaddafi and so many others who were, put out of line just because they wanted to be, to stand on their own without the West. The West is never happy when African leaders want to stand on their own. How do we go past this barrier which has been placed by the West?
That's a very important question, Mr. Bitben Lewis, and I think that it's very important for us to understand how we can get across that level. In all my analysis I have come to this one way forward. change in Africa will never come from the leaders. Change in Africa will never come from our governments, as a matter of fact. That is why you realize that we are still struggling with the aspect of uniting ourselves. We are talking of a population in Africa for over 1.3 billion Africans, where the majority are the youths, making up to 850 million to 900 million youths. So the leaders we are talking here of are just about 3 to 4% of the entire population that we are talking of. My challenge and the struggle that we are carrying out is to see how we can mobilize our youths. You can see how we can mobilize these masses and bring them to that awareness that there is a need for the African youths to make a correction here, because change can come from any angle. If it could not come from the United Nations, if it could not come from our government, then it can come from the masses. So I am looking at what the masses are going to contribute. We should not forget that we have seen in different African countries where the masses and the population have pressurized the government in changing policies that reflect the demands of the society. So the masses here plays a lot of role. We saw in Mali how the Malians went out to decide their own destiny. We need Africans to get to this place where they can become masters of themselves. And this is going to take an awareness for them to understand that those that we have been depending on, those that we have been looking on, cannot give us the solutions that we face every day. But if we as a people decide to understand our common problems and find the need to unite ourselves on the basis of the challenges that makes all of us to agree on, we can find a way forward. Because if you look at the way Africa is, why I said it's impossible to come from the level of our government, is that all about the Western multinational companies, corporations in Africa, neocolonialism is sponsored by Africans, exploiting Africans at the detriment of Africans to support the prices of the West. That is what neocolonialism is all about. So they need our governments to create them that safe passage to keep their multinational corporations in Africa at the detriment of the African children and the future of the African people. Now, when these masses and this population come to this realization, the reason why Africans are traveling out of Africa to go and find a life out, because they do not find a life in their own continent. When they come to this awareness, they will see the need to push away this agenda, because we are not talking here of fighting our government. We have crossed the level of picking up arms, fighting our governments, violence. No, this is solidarity. Africans need to celebrate Africans. Africans need to be accepted by Africans. Africans do not need to be accepted by the West or by the whites, but they need to find values in themselves. And that's why it goes back to what I call identity. And this identity has an affiliation to religion. We need to redefine Christianity. We need to redefine democracy, as I have been trying to explain in some other platform, that democracy that was brought to Africa is an upgraded version of Christianity. That is a political religion to enslave Africa, and that is why it is mandatory in the constitutions of the African government to practice democracy. When yet at the level of the United Nations, democracy is not being practiced because you have 5 permanent members, unchangeable. Power there is hereditary, and there is no, at that level, you don't have elections, is not rotational. So we must understand why the Vatican was raised up in 1929. It's very important for Africans to understand. We need to understand why the IMF and the World Bank was raised up in 1944. When they, like the other speaker was talking about, the French colonies have to give their 85% of their reserves to the Swiss bank and all of that. They kept Africa in a dependency mode. It's like a man who has a one leg. So you need something to support you so that you can gain balance. That's where the IMF comes in, to give the African countries the hope that through loans, aid, and credits they can develop themselves. But do not understand that the IMF stands there to actually enslave the African people using debt. And that's why when you as an African head of state or a country accept to be one of the indebted countries in the world, they give you debt reliefs and all of that, and which comes with strings attached and conditions. So many of these, our government are tied at the level of the IMF with debts. And it is this debts which is bringing the policies and the treaties which how it affects the functionalities of the state and the people's behavior. Because you cannot explain the fact where you are in your own country, a democracy, we talk of a democracy that does not give you right to your own currency. It does not give you right to your own economy. That is an abuse of democracy. That simply means that, as Dr. Riley said, democracy should not have been brought to Africa because that was not a fair deal. It is practiced only by healthy people, people who have attained, people who have achieved, people who have crossed a level of poverty, people who don't sweat, people whether they work or they don't work, there is food on their table. When there is a time of election, it's just like a friendly match. Who wins, who does not win, doesn't matter to them. They have already built a legacy for themselves. But you cannot bring that to a people who are still depending to develop a nation, and they need to borrow money to develop themselves. Statistics shows that from 1959 up to the current date, all loans that IMF has given to all developing countries has never developed any. That's what I call crisis development. They give you the intention that they are there to enable you develop your country. And through those loans, they get certain treaties and agreement, like we saw in Cameroon, where a company was giving a contract of the bridge in Cameroon for 80 billion. France came down due to a treaty it has with our country, took that loan for 120 billion CFA, gave it back to China for 80 billion, and then Chinese gave it back to Cameroonians for something lesser than 80 billion. This is just to tell you that it is some of these treaties that when they counsel your debts, they give you one thing and then they take another thing. So the IMF and the World Bank has not helped Africa. But how can we emerge from all of that? We need what I call the solidarity amongst ourselves, and we need to create how they call it a world market where you can buy shares, companies, where Africans themselves can promote themselves and can be self-sufficient, be able to charter their own future and not having to be suggested by what the West is saying. They are not here for any good. They are here for our resources, and it is very obvious. Another definition of a poor man is the inability for you to earn more than what you spend. Africa, yes, spends more than what it has. A head of state enters into power. For example, your salary is 1 million. They are calling you to give you a loan for 200 million. Where will you get that money to pay from? That is the birth of corruption in Africa, where Africa began its independence through loans. That simply means that Africa will never emerge because they have given Africa a very good reason to do what? To start corrupting itself, to support the price of the people you have subjected yourself to through loans and credit. So we need Africans to come to that place where Africans do not need to get loans from the West, credit from Paris Club, donations and aids. We have crossed that level. Africa is of age to know what is good for themselves. And we need to get to the point where, like I was saying, when Macron had a meeting in France where he called so many head of state, Kagame was also there, as we talk of certain developments in Africa where we appreciate them today. They went there, and Macron was talking of how he was going to develop the private sectors in Africa, how he was going to assist them in developing the private sector. Why is it that the private sector is a concern to them? Because they understand that when you have kept a people down in a particular condition for a very long period, in poverty, we are talking here of 85% of our natural reserves is held down by France. So 15% is given to us to manage a nation. That simply means we are limping. So our only support here is the World Bank and the IMF or the West. So the private sector is where the agitation is coming from. The jihadists, the Islamic extremists, the Boko Haram is coming from the agitation of these people who have kept them down for this long period in abject poverty. How are they going to develop our private sector? We can process our own raw material. we can industrialize what we have. We should be able to get to a point where we strike win deals, like we saw what late Magufuli did in Tanzania about the seaport, where he gave it to the Chinese. The Chinese was taking that seaport to construct that seaport with a condition that their companies will operate in China, in Tanzania, without paying tax. In Cameroon, for example, we have 316 companies owned by France not paying tax to our country because of the loans which they have claimed to have debt counseled to Africa. We need to get past this level. Okay. The building in AU in Addis Ababa was constructed for 200 million free gift by Chinese people to the African Union. A son in Nigeria, Davido, bought a car for $300 million. The building of AU is $200 million. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with us is what I call solidarity, cooperation, seeking one another and seeking to work with each other and becoming masters of ourselves. If Africans stand back and look within themselves and find the need and the potential which they have, Africa will grow beyond this level. All we need here is unity. Unity produces pure leadership.
Now,
pure leadership is giving birth out of unity. Without that,
when we talk about unity now, we look at countries which have gone past the level, which are more advanced than others. Now, how do you unify these countries and who already have a pride with their sovereignty? How do you unify them?
If you ask me, that's a very good question, but let me be very honest with you. I would say development and progress is defined in so many ways.
Okay.
The development we are seeing in Rwanda, as many would have cherished, in my best analysis of what Africa has, if any African has ever watched the movie called Wakanda, that is of the Black Panther, that is a closer example of a prototype of the potential of Africa. Our development should not be compared with what the West has. What explains the fact that back then in the days, our forefathers used to travel abroad without using plane, they didn't need visa. We had technology of our own, which we have given it up all away for what is not dividing us today. We need to get back to our roots. And that is why I call that the spirituality is very important, because that's what gives a human being its identity. That identity is what we have lost. And that is what we are trying to sensitize our younger generation, that we carry they need to understand these things. If we don't get them to understand these things, there will be no need for them to come together.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ateme Bako. Now we open the lines to get your opinions. You're watching us live this moment. It's the Pan-African debate on Afrique Media, your Pan-African television. We're here to discuss on the possibility of having a unified Africa. During his speech, President of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, suggested that the African continent should use Swahili as a common language, and this is towards unifying Africa. What are the possibilities, and how do we achieve a united Africa, and what advantage or what benefits will we have if Africa becomes united? Now, several points are being raised. Now, let me get back to you, Dr. Sinkala. We're expecting your calls. The numbers are open for you to reach out to us. Let's hear you. Welcome to the program. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, my brother. I greet all of you. I would like to say that we cannot speak about the unified we have a language. Because I was in Asia for 1999, that I entered in Asia. So when you look all Asia, especially China, Thailand, Malaysia, all those Asia, they have so many language. But they decide to have one language. When you go to China, they speak Mandarin. In China, they have more than 500 or 1,000 tribe language. So how can we be united without a language? It's not possible. So I really appreciate what the president of Uganda says, because let's start with that Swahili language. Because how many countries speak in Swahili language? If we start with that, it means that in school, our own children, they will, inside the language, they will also make a mathematics, physics, all those things. It means that it's going to be the development. But the way that I'm listening to you people talking is like everybody should be take care of himself and his own country, it will be very difficult because the Europeans have already defined us. Only the language that we can speak will push us to forget French and forget English. And we will realize that we are more than 1.3 billion Africans. We realize that before you invest in Africa, you should speak African language. We can even forget for the passport. We only think for ourselves and we cooperate with the Chinese and the Russian. So all those people will only follow us. So please think about that. Do not divide us. And secondly, when we're talking about, like my brother said, that we need to vaccine ourselves. We don't need to vaccine ourselves because in Swahili language, we will learn about biologically cells, and it will be easy for a Cameroonian to go to Tanzania or to go to Kenya to open an industry. It will be very easy for a Tanzanian or a Kenyan or Uganda to come in Cameroon and invest, and we will only black that will investing. So if the way we people are speaking, we will never unite. We will never. Let's only speak. I'm speaking more French than English. What is happening, for example, in our own country in Cameroon? Why we are divided? Because of two systems, French and English. Who they are controlling us. But with one language, everything will be open. When you people talk about Singapore, you go to Singapore, they are speaking Cantonese language. After Cantonese language, they have minority of Malay language. They have minority of Indian language. But inside, there are so many tribes. So it's a time for us to think first for the language, and then the rest will come easily. God keep you people safe.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your opinion. We very much appreciate you. And we keep on taking your calls. Now, let me leave you to react to the opinion of the caller, Dr. Sinkala. If you got the caller very well, maybe let me get your reaction from that based on his standpoint.
Yes, thank you very much. The people are actually tired of us talking, especially those of us who are in position of influence as leaders on the continent. They will need action that will take us from where we are. I think that is very important. But again, we talk here the whole day, and lack of going forward as implementation is the only thing that hasn't worked for Africa. Our political system, yes, it was franchised from United States of America, which is democracy, but the way we practice it, it's not the way they practice it in the United States of America. It's a different. Here we involve political power until up to the level of the chancellor. In the United States of America, democracy is enshrined into the government operations. And these government, even if they have an idiot who is a president, the system of governance shall take care of all the Americans. But again, us here, we are completely different from the way we practice it. I think we need a lot of political hygiene and learn about how to practice democracy. But one thing I need to submit that we people of Africa, we need to realize what is leadership. And I think leadership starts knowing how many children we have. By knowing how many children we have, we shall know how to look after them. We shall know who's supposed to be in school, who's supposed to eat, and who is sick and who's supposed to be taken to the hospital. And if the hospital is within that circumference of that person within a square mile. So these are the issues that we fail to understand in Africa. If you ask the president of Ghana, ask him what is the population of Ghana, he won't give you the exact number. He will tell you, according to United Nations, the people of Ghana were 23 million, 43 million, which is in actual fact not the correct number. That story is the same as well. You come here in South Africa, you ask the president or deputy president, how many people do you have in the country? We do not know. So if we do not know the number of people who are in the country within a square kilometers, which is called the population density, we will never gonna govern. What people in terms of democracy in the United States of America and many other developed countries, what they do is to identify the people who are there and how many are disabled, What facilities are within that reach? Is there schools? If there's schools, yes, what are they getting educated? Are they fit into the economy in terms of industrialization? And how can we protect the local schools? Can we manufacture the Mercedes bumper from within Africa or within our country or within our environment? Or should we import the bumper? Or can we import the toothpick, which I talk about all the time? Then from that governance of looking after ourselves, we will know which ones must come to Africa and which one mustn't come from here. When I visited Switzerland 2 years ago, you realize that in Switzerland they talk of perfection. You know, it's not flooded economy like the way we have opened it up. They said the Inter-Africa Free Trade Area Agreement will open up doors, but we are opening up doors to counterfeit things, like we are inviting only the Chinese buy products, something which is not even strong, which is eliminating the local industries. If you look at the car, a car itself, the Mercedes-Benz, has got more than 300,000 parts. And these 300,000 parts are manufactured by different companies in Germany or even in China. So if we can limit those things and making sure that we start implementing, that is the economical power. But again, our political parties and political power, which of course we shall not go back to the way it was traditional governance. We are into the democratic governance. We are getting away from monarchs. You know, already, like I mentioned, Lesotho, not Lesotho, but Lesotho as well, eventually get away from the kingship. Eswatini as well is running away from the kingship. So we want a governance which can look after the people. You know, what are they doing? How do we care about them? Putting them into a position of influence that they can benefit. From that day, then we'll start now making Africa to go onto a trajectory like China, where China is. China actually many years ago was worse off than any other African countries, because African countries were doing very well at that stage. You know, China, we can only see the Chinese from the movies. That's all they could do. But they chose, with the help of China Ma, you know, Chairman Ma realized and told each and every Chinese that this is the plan which you have to work towards. Limit the number of children so that we can grow the economy, so that we do not overpopulate the people because of the pie, the food is too small now, we are not producing much. At a later stage, recently now, a month ago, 2 weeks ago, when they celebrated 100 years of them working on and the Communist Party, they have now allowed the Chinese people to have more than 3 children, you know, because now they know that the economical power and the money is there in China, you know. But if you look at Africa, we're still under construction. I hear my fellow panelists here and many other people on the African continent, they're still talking about we need to find a solution. We need to know what's supposed to be done. We need to investigate. How long will Africa be under construction of trying to find what we are constructing, whether we are constructing a house or we are constructing a car? We do not know. But brothers and sisters, Africans, fellow citizens, and those who are in leadership, presidents of the African continent, what we decided many years ago by our forefathers was that what we needed, and we need to work towards that. Now the question is, as an African, which part of participation are you going to participate? Are you going to go into the government so that we take out those people who are in government who does not know anything, who are just consuming and eating? Those must be replaced by people who've got brains that they can start the governance, starting from the councillors, going to the MPs, going to the governors, going to the whoever who is managing the area. They must make sure that the people are having a fair deal. That will be the beginning of us going forward, because talking in Africa will be a talk and we'll talk and we'll talk. Already it's almost close to 100 years when the first African country regained the independence. So now how can we get the economical independence? The economical independence is producing what we want to eat and limit the exportation of raw materials. Those of us in West Africa, they are in Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, where there's cocoa. That cocoa, we should not export it to Switzerland and it comes as exotic chocolate from Switzerland. instead of chocolate from Ghana. We must tell our leadership that we need to, if the Switzerland wants to work with us, they must bring the equipment, they must do the transfer of skills, that this cocoa will be processed within Ghana there from the first product to the finished product, and only a few will be exported. You know, even in your household, governance is like in your household. The way you look after your children, making sure that they've got a shelter, making sure that they've got food to eat, making sure that you can take them to school, making sure that they've got facility when they are sick, you can take them to the hospital. That's how you govern the country. Let us identify people wherever they are in the villages, in the rural areas. Those are citizens that can be feeding through the economy from.
All right, Dr. Cinkala, thank you very much. We'll come back to you just very shortly. Certainly, let's get to hear from you. Who is calling us? If you're online, please, let's get your opinion. You're live on Afrique Media, the program, the Pan-African Debate. Let's get your opinion, please.
Hello?
You're live on Afrique Media. Let's get your opinion.
Yeah, good afternoon, Afrique Media. Thank you for the opportunity to express myself. I would like to say something. Firstly, how can I ask question. In history, we understand that the richest person on earth was from Africa, that's from Mali. Nobody in the world is rich as this man in Africa. But Africa is the poor countries on earth. So there's a problem. We don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe in ourselves. Our leaders, like our well-educated people, they keep us tell us lie. They don't tell us the African history. We don't know our history. They don't teach African history in school. They keep us teaching us foreign history. So I don't like for always to try to blame the foreign countries. No, we blame ourselves because we don't teach our history to our children in school. That's the problem. Africa must teach their history in school. Talk about Africa. Tell every little child that you are from Africa. Africa is the first founded continent in this world. We are rich, but we are poor in education because we don't teach our children about our what Africa. I don't want people to blame the foreign country. I always ask the question: want to build a hospital in the country? You ask for foreign government? No. It's you to do that. Because you are wicked to your continent, you don't do that to your continent. Because we are wicked. Africans, we are wicked for ourselves. Yeah, how can you tell me civilization started in Africa? But Africa, there's nothing we talk about Africa. Everything you see from overseas was in Africa. So we need to teach our African history. That's the first point. If you don't talk about your history, you will never have progression. Because foreign countries teach their children their history. Well, we keep on talking about our history. The first white man to come to Africa. But before that white man, there were black people who did a lot of good things in Africa. We don't teach that to our children. We keep on every time talking about, we have like satellite on Earth. But Africa has this in the past century. So my problem is we have to teach our Africa history to our children. So we should understand who are we? Who are we people? Where do we come from? We are the founder of the earth, Africans.
For your opinion, we very much appreciate. And let's get another call online. If you're there, let's get your opinion. You're live on Afrique Media, the Pan-African Television. We're live this moment, the Pan-African Debate. Let's get your opinion if you're live on the program. Good afternoon. All right. Maybe while expecting other callers, let me get to you, Dr. Nick Nwayam. You've been following up the comments. Possibly let's get this caller before we come back to you. Welcome to the program. Good afternoon. You're live on Africa Media. Let's get your opinion, please. Good afternoon. All right, possibly we're going to come back to you now. Dr. Nick Nwayam, the callers one raised the issue of knowing our history as well as the problem of language. Now, Rafi made reference to the present crisis in Cameroon, where the two regions at the moment were against the fact that they were marginalized by the Francophone majority. Now, this, many, however, have said was not a language problem, but now the integration of the English minority into the French job system was a problem because many jobs are in French, and not being able to master the language, it's a setback. Now, do you think having a common language is going to help integrate Africans into other sectors and into, integrating themselves easily into other countries?
Thank you very much. There are, in those statements that you have made, there are a couple of half-truths in it, so it's confusing. Now, the problem in Cameroon, for starters, is a problem of marginalization, where the English-speaking are marginalized by the French-speaking government. And the marginalization comes in the sense that, when you are English speaking, you don't benefit from the system like the others. But it's not really because the Anglophones don't understand French. No, that's not where it is. Because if you see like what happened with the appointments at the Cameroon radio television station, it's not because the Anglophone journalists don't understand French. No, so it's just a system, and we hope that that will be corrected. There's a dialogue that is underway. A dialogue will come. There will be reconciliation, and there will be unity in Cameroon, and most of those problems will be thrashed. Okay. It's not a language thing, it's marginalization. It was marginalization as a modus operandi that will be changed. Now, that said, let's go back to Africa. For Africa to be able to speak one language is great. So let's say that, okay, let's start teaching all our children in Africa, Swahili, backed up maybe with Lingala or something like that. It would be great. But beyond the language, what is there? Beyond the language is the sound education. If that education is not corrected, you have to, what am I talking? You have to give the African child the kind of education which allows him to think like a South Korean child or a Singaporean child. That is what you need. Or a child from Israel or Japan. If you don't have that kind of a thinking, if you don't have those capacities, so that we begin to make our own furniture instead of importing Chinese furniture, until we begin to change our timber into products, until we begin to make our own medicine and build our own homes, we should do it in such a way that when you enter our supermarket, you should see a change. As of now, if you enter our supermarkets in Douala or Yaoundé, you'll find out more than 95% of the stuff on the shelves are imported. That is wrong. You should get to a point where we get about 50% of the things on our shelves, we make them locally. If we cannot get to that point, then our economy is limping. You should be able to produce what you eat, produce your own medicine, and solve your own problems. Is key. That is the key. Build your own roads, build your own dams. Then one day you might build your own cars and aeroplanes, but start by building your own houses, growing your own food, getting your own medicine, and the little things, do them yourself for yourself. Don't depend on others to do those things for you.
Now,
It's very important.
Now, let's come back to the fact that we already trapped, several African countries are already trapped with loans given to them. And these loans, just like Mr. Atem said, has not helped to develop the African continent, has not helped us in any way. We're still indebted, and we're vulnerable to these persons who have given us loans. Now, how do we get out of all this?
That's right. Yes. Mr. Atem Bako was saying something. He establishes a position that we are very indebted, and even when we take the money, we waste it. Okay? We take the loans, and we don't use the loans to put the loans to any useful gain. We waste the money. So wastage is our middle name. And that wastage comes from our poor education and our poor mindsets and this greedy, thieving attitudes. Now, when we train our children to become more responsible, more resourceful, and more committed to the common good, we'll begin to see a change. We will still borrow. We will still borrow, but this time you'll be borrowing wisely. Let's say, for instance, that we had a leader in let's not use Cameroon. Let's say we have a leader in a country like what, Chad. Let's take Chad just for use as an example, so nobody feels hurt. And this young leader who has come there now realizes that they have problems of roads and whatever. What if he trains many of those Chadian youths to be able to run those heavy equipments and build the roads? And then he goes to China, instead of asking for money, not China, he goes to Saudi Arabia, and instead of taking money, borrows tar and brings it. And then he borrows building equipment, tractors and this road building equipment from China or from America. And he gives those to his youths. And the youths build the roads themselves. You see that? This is the solution. The solution is in this thing called DIY. Do it yourself. Whatever you do it yourself. That is the secret. It doesn't matter how difficult it is, but we have problems like this. There are some simple problems down the ladder, and there are some very difficult problems up the ladder. Let us start to train ourselves and our youth to DIY, to do it yourself. Start with the simple things. The complex things, you can bring in help from abroad, not to come and do it and go, but as they are doing it, tuck your children onto them so that the children learn what the white man or the Chinese is doing, so when he is gone, your child can do it. Okay. But when we have a situation like I saw recently at the Palais de Congrès in Yaoundé, I'm so mad about it, because that Palais de Congrès in Yaoundé was built by the Chinese 30 years ago, and then the Chinese come 30 years afterwards to renovate the building, to change the lamps, change the ceiling, change the carpets, and change the sound system. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. At the time that they were building, Cameroonian youth would have been building with them, and Cameroonian youth would have ensured the maintenance, and Cameroonian youth would have been doing the renovation. Until we learn to get up from sleep and do the dirty work ourselves, we'll be talking history, we'll be talking stories, and we're going nowhere. That is the bottom line. Do it yourself.
Do it yourself. Thank you very much, Dr. Nick Nwanyam. And
by the way, before you take the microphone, to cite a good example again, when President Magufuli came to power, the country was in a mess with all these debts and so on, but he believed in the internal capacity of Tanzanians to be able to do it, and he led the Tanzanians, and they used internal resources and achieved all that they did, and we just have to do what Magufuli did. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just do what Magufuli did.
All right, and someone somewhere is watching us and listening to that. This is the Pan-African debate on Africa now. Mr. Atem Bako, where do we go from here?
Mr. Big Ben Lewis, the simple truth here is that if Africa is going to emerge, and if the African population are going to trust their leaders and their administration, their government and Africans will need to remove democracy away from its constitution. Because as long as we apply democracy, it offers room, a wide range room, for the West to always suggest among all the political parties that raise up from the different regions, tribes, and ethnic backgrounds who are fighting for the presidential seat it gives the West the room to always come behind a party and then push the agenda again forward and then get back a government in place which is going to keep their existing treaties. This is very important. Now, when you talk about loans and borrowing, the simple truth here from what we saw with Magufuli, you don't need to borrow money from somebody who depends, he builds his economy, and his economy depends on your own resources. You cannot borrow money from that kind of a person. So this is one of the things that the African head of state have not yet come to this truth, whereby the money you are taking from the West as loan is what they have collected from you and they are still collecting.
As resources.
Pardon? As resources as well. A good example, we're talking about Macron giving 20 billion to all African head of state for Africans not to travel. How much does France receive in Africa in the 14 colonies as colonial tax every year? $500 billion. That money is enough alone to make France rich. So France cannot borrow us money when France survives. It survives on us. Its economy and its life, its breath it takes is from Africa. So how do African head of state succumb themselves? It is this what I call strings attached, where it does not permit the room. A good example would be Rwanda. Kagame was asked a question last month by a 22-year-old white girl concerning the future of LGBT in Ghana. Kagame could not respond openly to that question because he understands the strings which are attached. Why do we ask the question? Why is it like this? Why is it like this? Our governments are tied. Strings are tied. They are between life and death, taking a good decision at the expense of your own population. That is where our governments are. And until we get to the understanding that a man like Kagame, asked by a 22-year white old girl, that cannot be asked by a Rwandese in Rwanda asking him that kind of question. What is the future of LGBT? He said it's not going to be a problem. We are going to see how we can adopt that. We are going to see how we can. This is what I'm saying, that those conditions which they subject you to what we call loans and debts and credits is how they are going to use in bringing their agendas in Africa and pushing it to the masses of the people which they cannot reach to, but they use the government which they have endorsed and enslaved through debts and through weapons, ammunition to repress the 85%. Africans need to come to this level. The man was talking about we hate ourselves. We were not like that before. But because of the conditions in which Africans are pushed to the wall, Africans are now killing one another just to survive. This is a state of leadership, and that is why I, as a Pan-Africanist, am offering a way forward on how we are going to emerge out of this issue by Africans coming together, and this is going to take the population of the African youth. That is Sudan. The president of Sudan was offered to ICC, The Hague, as a free gift to be indicted by his own people. Why? Because Sudan has been removed from the list of countries that were sponsoring terrorists. That was a propaganda built by the West for many years. But that was the same Sudan America sent bin Laden in the late 80s to go and create a route of terrorism in Africa. Until today, the Middle East, Africa, we are talking of terrorism, but that was propagated and sponsored by America by sending bin Laden. The same bin Laden they are talking of, America sponsored him in fighting the Russians in Afghanistan. The same America sponsored the bin Laden. So what I'm saying here is that until we come to understand that this our affiliation of democracy, United Nations, World Bank is what is bringing in the Western culture and agendas in Africa. Sudan now is feeding on loans and aid, but Sudan has been for 3 decades under a abject poverty state because it was giving sanction at the level of America. Europe and all their allies stopped doing business with Sudan. Sudan was an island until the people were, it was a horrendous situation. But once America removed their names, all the credit and debt Sudan was owing was cancelled by Europe, Paris Club, United Nations, World Bank, IMF. This is just to tell you that we have a group of people that represent themselves as a structure like the EU and the United Nations, dealing with Africa as independent nations, where your brother can be dying Rwanda is doing well, because Rwanda can only emerge as long as the existing strings still attached. So what I'm saying here is that every religion is based on one's culture. Your history gives you your culture and your identity, and your religion should be found in it. So we need, like the caller said, we need to educate our children the values of who we are. This is very important. Africans need to come to the point where they have to understand that we are not only just a race, but we are considered as the choosing one. The land that flows with milk and honey. The Bible which they brought to us is a chaff. They have removed every principle. And now is a time where we have to redefine these things and understand that these people are applying principles, biblical principles, and giving us chaff, where what we practice here only enslaves our people. We need to get past this level and bring ourselves together to overcome this.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Atemi Bako, Pan-Africanist and political analyst. Now, let's end with you, Dr. Charles Sinkala. We understand that the Africa 55 states is already making strides towards, achieving this common goal now. But when we consider what Dr. Ningwayam said, doing it yourself, we equally consider eradicating democracy, just like Mr. Atem has said. We consider dependency. We still have this dependency. We still take loans from the West and all that, and the strings equally attached. Now, with all this in place, now, how do you think we are going to achieve this reality of having a unified Africa? Well, it's unfortunate we are not having Dr. Charles Sinkala. Now, certainly, Dr. Ningwayam, maybe a last comment from you. The question I was going to ask Dr. Charles Sinkala, maybe just in 1 minute.
Yeah, could you reframe the question again?
Yeah, we're asking about with all these obstacles in place. You just mentioned doing it yourself.
Yeah.
He talked about eradicating democracy. We still have democracy in place. Yeah. Dependency and strings attached to the loans which we're taking. With all this in place, are we going to make any progress anytime soon?
Like I said, I would keep repeating myself, because I think with the mindset of a surgeon, I think with the mindset of an entrepreneur, and it's about principles. It's not whether I like you or I don't like you. What is it that works and what doesn't work? I mean, you have to. That's the way. If your compound is dirty, get up and clean it yourself. If you don't know how to clean it, ask somebody to teach you how to clean it. How do you put the question? Rephrase the question. How do you put money into the pockets of African children? What are you supposed to do so that African children can earn money? What are you supposed to do so that African children stop migrating and dying in the Mediterranean Sea and Libya and so on? What are you going to do so that African children stop, piling themselves in front of U.S. embassies and French embassies at 4 a.m. to run away? What are you going to do so that your own children who are out there in the diaspora, they can begin to feel comfortable coming back? Those are the questions we have to start asking. That is what is going to unite Africa. It's not the speeches. It's about doing something. And it turns around great leadership, capacity building, respecting each other, respecting merit. The technology is about changing your economies, making things work. It's about industry. It's not about talking from morning till evening. No. It's great leadership. And again, as I would say, what are the kind of leaders we need in Africa? We need enlightened, benevolent despots.
All right.
Democracy with poor people who lack capacity is no use.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ningwayam, educationist, entrepreneur, and a lot more.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Atemi Bako, political analyst and Pan-Africanist, thanks very much for your opinion.
Thank you very much.
On the other side on Zoom, we had Dr. Charles Sinkala, President of Africa 55 States. We thank you very much. Unfortunately, we could not have the last word from you. We thank those of you who took our time to call, and those of you who are watching the program live this day on Afrique Media. It's been the Pan-African Debate. Join us again for more programs on Afrique Media. A rebroadcast will be yours on Monday at 15 hours West African time. Until then, stay tuned and bye-bye for now.